Who has the burden of proof? Recently, some questions have come up in regards to who exactly has the burden of proof, and what actually constitutes a claim, specifically in regards to the statement evolution is true. As I have noted before, the phrase evolution is true is a category error, and it doesn't make much sense to say a noun is true or false. We don't say car is true or chair is true. We evaluate the proposition if it is true or false, or in some cases, maybe even unevaluatable, if we are effectively unable to evaluate the truth value of the proposition. But it is nonsensical to say a noun is either true or false. A proposition is unable to be evaluated when it is a malformed proposition. I'll still add Ozzy's example here and say if the proposition given is the King of America is bald, then there is no way to determine if that statement is true or false, since of course America doesn't have a king, at least not since Elvis died. However, in casual conversation, we know that when we say evolution is true, we are just in shorthand saying that evolution is observed and that it exists. So if someone says evolution is a fact, and it is challenged as a claim rather than a statement of fact, the only burden the person has to do to substantiate the claim is to give evidence that in the scientific community it is accepted that evolution is indeed a fact by scientific consensus. And if someone acknowledges that it is taught universally in the biological department in every accredited university or college around the world, then that simple, trivial burden of proof has been met. It is absurd for somebody to say at that point it is argumentum ad populum, or argument from popularity. If you cite a recognized scientific source, or in some cases even click-reel sources, the burden of proof has been met. For example, if I posit the objective claim that the tallest mountain above sea level on the planet is Mount Everest, then by giving evidence of challenge, one must only show a recognized informational source that states indeed Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, and then the burden of proof has been met. I physically do not have to go measure Mount Everest from sea level to its top to meet my burden of proof, as that would simply be absurd. It is merely stating a scientific fact, and if challenged, then the objective claim can be validated if true or false. But it isn't even a claim unless it's challenged. It is merely a statement of objective fact. And if challenged, then it has to be established what the person is exactly challenging, or specifically what they're taking issue with as far as the veracity of the statement. As a scientific theory, in context to the statement evolution is true, then the same principle applies. It is not up to a person saying evolution is true to go over all the empirical data, studies, or published research papers just to justify to a person that doesn't accept the theory of evolution is in fact a confirmed model. All that is required to substantiate the context of the phrase evolution is true is that one shows that in the scientific community that it is almost completely nearly universally accepted. We can do this by showing sources that state that the theory of evolution is 99.7% accepted by every scientist in the world, leaving only 0.3% who don't, which are literally 3 standard deviations from norm, and to what we would refer to as outliers. So when people say there are scientists that disagree with the theory of evolution, it is completely meaningless, as those scientists fall statistically into what we would expect to pretty much find for anything. There are even people who still think that the world is flat, as there will always be people, either due to cognitive impairment or placing personal ideological beliefs ahead of proper evaluation of the evidence, so their opinion means absolutely nothing, unless they can demonstrate that their opinion is more correct than the scientific consensus. Unless those outliner scientists can give demonstrable evidence that falsifies the theory of evolution, then their opinion is simply subjective opinion. Now, it is often stated that the scientific consensus can be demonstrated to be wrong, and of course this is absolutely historically true. Scientists are not infallible. However, in the system of science, it has been a long since established rule that if something is scientific consensus, then the burden of proof falls upon the person who is introducing a new idea contrary to the established paradigm. This is set up for a variety of different reasons. It is to ensure that a new novel idea has been rigorously examined and tested before it is confirmed to be scientific fact. Sometimes this takes many years, or even decades, and sometimes even after the person's death. But this process helps ensure that we don't introduce unestablished, non-scientific, or unconfirmed ideas into the scientific theory. As such, when an ignorant armchair scientist wants to challenge scientific consensus, they cannot shift the burden to others to demonstrate to them that the scientific theory is a valid model or not. They only need to be shown that evolutionary theory is the accepted model, and if they choose to try to falsify it, then they can study the subject and try to write a paper that demonstrates it to be false. A person challenging the claim, evolution is true, can be interpreted in multiple different ways. One way would be to challenge the actual evidence that confirms that evolution has been observed. Another way would be to challenge the evidence if evolution theory is an accepted model and confirmed theory. Another way would be to challenge if evolution is accepted fact almost universally. And yet another way was a category error, since a noun cannot be evaluated for its truth value. If a person means to challenge a statement by the first way, that they are trying to challenge the actual evidence that confirms evolution has been observed, then it is trivial to show someone that evolution is observed, by simply showing them any study on the observations of evolution. There are hundreds of thousands to choose from, and any one of them would fulfill this burden of proof, if this is the challenge they mean. At that point, the burden is upon them to falsify the evidence given that evolution is observed. If the person means to challenge the second statement, that evolution is an accepted model and confirmed theory, again, it is trivial to show someone that this is the universal consensus and taught around the world in accredited colleges. One could merely just provide a number of syllabuses or classes offered to show this to be true. Again, not required to go over all the specific evidence that supports the scientific theory, as that burden of proof was met when it became a scientific theory. If the person means the third way, to challenge evolution as an accepted fact almost universally, then again, all one must do is provide evidence that 99.7% of all the world's scientists accept evolutionary theory. At that point, the burden of proof is met and once again shifts to the person saying that it is not almost universally accepted, but providing a small list of names doesn't refute this claim, as again, they would fall into statistical outliers. If the person challenges the statement evolution is true as a category problem, then they technically would be correct. But it is a trivial point, since as noted before, the statement is understood to be in casual conversation that evolution is in fact observed. However, in none of those cases is it ever up to anyone to demonstrate the actual evidence that has already been confirmed that has helped establish the evolutionary theory. Just like it is not up to me to go measure Mount Everest in order to substantiate the statement Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, from sea level to the top. That work has already been done, and that burden of proof has already been met. When understanding the concept of the burden of proof, it is much more than just saying a positive claim by a claimant has the burden of proof, or that an objective statement becomes an objective claim if challenged. It is also important to recognize that the burden of proof concept is just as equally important to someone claiming that the scientific theory is wrong. In science, a scientific theory has already met its burden of proof. Again, it is not up to anyone to demonstrate to someone the evidence as to why it is a confirmed model, as that is called shifting the burden of proof. In this example, the burden of proof is to be on the person trying to falsify the scientific theory, as that is how science works. Science is not going to award someone the Nobel Prize for simply not accepting the evidence that evolution is true, or merely stating that it isn't true, or that it has not met its burden of proof. It is simply ridiculously comical to think otherwise.